Hi, I'm Dierdre, and I've had OCD symptoms for as long as I can remember. I had to go into a mental hospital in 2017 because my symptoms were that bad. But here I am 8 years later, and I don't meet any of the criteria to have OCD or mental illness in general. Now, that being said, obviously I still do have OCD and OCD symptoms. I've just gotten to the point where my symptoms don't control or dictate my life anymore. I'm literally at a point now where I can go days without even noticing any symptoms, which I think is pretty great. I think a huge thing that I want people to understand with recovery is that recovery doesn't mean there is a complete absence of anxiety or of emotion in general. I still get anxious sometimes because so does everybody. It's a normal part of life. You can't control every aspect of your life or stress, but you can control and handle how you react to it. That's what makes you healed and recovered, is how you handle problems that come your way, how you handle thoughts that come your way, especially intrusive thoughts. I can't even tell you how incredible my life is now, though, because of all the work that I did with exposure therapy. I've also done cognitive behavioral therapy. I've read self-help books that have helped me understand how my brain works and why it works, and it's helped me cure my eating disorders and all of those types of things. But I mainly dove into researching, learning, and understanding obsessive compulsive disorder. When I went to the mental hospital in 2017, I was told that OCD is not curable. And mind you, I was in my darkest state at this point, so that was the last thing that I wanted to hear. I remember being so angry because there's really only two ways you can go after hearing that. You can go in the direction of what's the point, then why am I even doing any of this therapy? Why am I working so hard for no reward if you're telling me that I'm still gonna have OCD? Or you could go in the opposite direction, which is luckily the direction that I went of, I'm gonna prove you wrong. What he should have said and what he should have told me is that you can get to a point where your body doesn't react to the intrusive thoughts, images, and fears anymore. You can get to a point where you barely notice symptoms, where you don't meet the medical criteria to have OCD or mental illness. You can not only live a normal, happy life, but you can also have better mental health and self-regulation than those around you who may have never struggled with mental illness in the past before, or who have literally never been diagnosed with anything. You can get to a point where OCD no longer controls or dictates your life and decisions anymore. That is what I should have been told. I went from a spot where I didn't realize that the human body was capable of getting that dark, and now I'm in a spot where I didn't realize that the human body was capable of being this at peace. I didn't realize that I could live my day-to-day in such a calm state. My worst OCD day now, and I'm talking my absolute worst, would have been a day that I would have prayed for 8 years ago. Not only do I barely notice or react to my intrusive thoughts most days, I also rarely do compulsions. This is coming from someone whose entire life was a compulsion. I had magical thinking, so every step I took, breath I had, thing I wrote, doorway I walked through, every single thing was choreographed. It was choreographed through years of compulsions and safe movements and motions. My OCD dictated how I walked through life. I couldn't even sit down and read a book because every new line there had to be a compulsion that came with it. I had to think a safe thought on the first word that I read, and God help me if I turned the page. Turning the page was a compulsion in itself. It had to feel right. So multiple times I would have to reread pages, or I'd have to reread lines, or I'd have to start over, go back, read the last line, read the first line, read the last line, read the first line, over and over and over and over again. And God forbid I saw a word that scared me, the whole book might have to be thrown out. The way my OCD shows up now is so minimal. But whenever I do notice an OCD thought, or my brain is trying to tell me to avoid something, I purposely try and utilize that moment to aid in my recovery. Even though obviously I'm technically recovered, I would like to stay that way. I would say I try to do exposure therapy every single day. Every single moment, every single time something comes up, I try to face that head on. Some exposures I do have actually become habitual to me, or I'll look back on a situation and think, I did that without even thinking about it, and 2 years ago I would have never done that. It's sometimes so easy to do a compulsion and not have anybody notice and not have it be that big of a deal because it's not a big compulsion. But those are, funny enough, those are the ones that I target specifically because thousands of those throughout the years, those add up. And you can choose with every little compulsion to avoid it or to face it head on with an exposure. And if you face it head on with an exposure, it goes into your recovery point system. And if you choose to give into it, it goes into your OCD point system. Obviously, the OCD point system gives you immediate relief, but it ends up adding more stress and compulsions and fear in the long run, whereas your recovery point system is maybe a little harder or difficult in the moment, but later on it'll just get easier and have a better life and be a lot better. I've basically been able to gain this trust in myself over having all of my trust in my compulsions. I have so many instances now to be able to look back on and show me that I was okay, not because I did the compulsion, but that I was okay even though I went without it and went against it. Now let's kind of talk about when my OCD does flare up in recovery. The main time that my OCD symptoms flare up or become more intense is typically when I'm traveling, or if I'm stressed, or if I have a lot of uncertainty surrounding me. Two of the biggest and most impactful exposures of my life I actually did this year. One of them was technically a forced exposure, and then the other one was obviously I purposely put myself in that situation. I know that I get stressed and anxious when I'm traveling, so I purposely booked myself a solo trip to Scotland in August. And mind you, anxiety is normal even if you don't struggle with mental illness when traveling. It can happen to the best of us. There's so many things that can go wrong, and there's so many things that, are uncertain that you have to deal with. So you kind of sometimes have to go into these trips giving yourself a little grace, which I do try to do, but it doesn't make it easier sometimes facing these difficult things. This trip basically though started off very rocky. I took a train from London, where my home is, and I went up to Glasgow. That was pretty effortless. When I got to Glasgow, I forgot my debit card and couldn't rent a car. The wheels on my huge suitcase were falling off. By the end of the day, I had one wheel on this massive suitcase. It was a disaster. I forgot my debit card, but thankfully I did have Apple Pay. But not having my debit card meant that I had to take a train, and that added 5 hours to my travel day. So it ended up being an 11-hour travel day. So now I'm stressed. My OCD is flaring up. My suitcase is gone. I'm sore. I'm tired. It's very overwhelming. People ran into me, and I have emotional contamination. So if somebody that I view as emotionally contaminated touches me, sometimes even if they're not, sometimes it's just people touch me, I either feel uneven or I feel like tingly, and I need to bump into somebody else to get the tingles off of me. So that did kind of happen when people were bumping into me. I ended up crying that evening because I was so overwhelmed and my OCD had been really flaring up, because I thought that these were all signs that the trip was going to go bad and I was going to die. I just was so convinced that it was just going to be the worst trip. And mind you, I've been looking forward to this for so long because I was going to swim with basking sharks. I was going to go bungee jumping, canyoning, and obviously these things are also exciting, but they also do come with a lot of risk. Even though it's a controlled risk, like something could happen. Like, what if something hits my head and I drown? Like all of these things. I'm being bombarded with these intrusive thoughts. Luckily though, it ended up being one of, if not the absolute best trip of my entire life. And to me, it just really reinforced what I logically knew, that anxiety does not mean that something bad's going to happen. It just means that you're getting outside of your comfort zone. It just means that something happened that sucks in the moment, but it doesn't mean that it's going to have to suck the whole trip. One bad day does not equal a bad week or a bad year or a bad month. And then the second of my huge exposures that I did this year, the forced exposure, if you will, was I was able to sleep between 2 graveyards, not just one, 2. I have scrupulosity OCD, super religious based, super, supernatural oriented. I spent my whole childhood thinking that I was going to become possessed and I was going to wake up when I was like 40, 50, 60 and my whole life was going to be gone. The people that I love and care about weren't going to want to talk to me, or that they had died and I just missed my whole life. It was like a repetitive, really, really, really horrific, intrusive, scary thought that I had. It all happened because my Catholic school teacher told me that I could become possessed if I didn't do my homework, which I knew that wasn't true, but I was like, oh my God, you can become possessed. And then from there, it went to a lot more like dark religious things, unfortunately. So a graveyard, walking past, I would have to hold my breath and I would have to change all my clothes the second that I got home, and I would have to take a shower and rinse all of the spirits off of me and all of that stuff. We pulled up to this house. There was a graveyard here and a graveyard there. This was a trip that me and my mom had planned. My mom had come over from Boston to visit me in London, and we drove over to the Cotswolds. I could have ruined that entire trip. And if this had happened even like 2 years ago, the trip would have been ruined. But because of all of the exposure therapy that I had done, I was able to not only sit in the house comfortably and continue talking about things I want to talk to, continue texting the guy that I was talking to at the time without worrying that it was going to contaminate my relationship or a spirit was going to get involved and mess it up for me. I was able to use full sentences and not avoid certain words, and when talking to my mom, and I was also able, when we were outside of the house, I didn't feel like I was contaminated outside of the house. So I was able to enjoy the entire trip. Nighttime was a bit difficult for me, and I did end up crying and not really being able to fall asleep. And my mom also was having a hard time falling asleep, so I just ended up crawling into bed with her, and I did eventually sniffle myself to sleep. But we were there for 2-3 nights, and guess what? It was an incredible trip. I literally have a sweatshirt from that trip. That's another thing. I would have never, ever, ever gotten a sweatshirt because I thought taking it home would mean that I would be contaminated, and I would never buy anything from anywhere because if I had any sort of like weird vibe about it, because I thought that, you know, I would carry the bad vibe home with me. It's one of my favorite sweatshirts. I wear it all the time. I should have worn it for this video actually. But to be able to go from that, where I used to literally have to hold my breath driving by a graveyard, not speak, not do anything, not think any thoughts, all of that stuff, to being able to sleep in front of one, chill, watch TV, be in that house, be in that area, and not have it affect my whole week, let alone the rest of my year, was one of the biggest things ever to happen to me exposure wise. That just goes to show that even though you have OCD, and even if you're recovered or it comes up and scares you every once in a while, every situation is an opportunity to prove your OCD wrong. It's trying to protect you, it's trying to keep you safe, but it's also trying to keep you from living your life. Being hurt is inevitable, but being happy isn't. You have to create that, and you do that by fighting back. I used to have to wake up, then pray perfectly, and then have to put my foot on the ground at the right exact pressure and point, and had to be thinking clean thoughts, and then get up perfectly, thinking clean thoughts, and then walking out the door, that didn't feel right, walk back, walk forward, walk back, walk forward, brush my teeth a certain amount of times, put my makeup on. I thought something contaminated. I have to take it all off, put it back on again, take it all off, put it back on again. Now I just get to like wake up, get out of bed, brush my teeth, put my clothes on, don't even think about what I'm wearing, walk out the door. Takes 2 seconds. I don't even have compulsions in the morning. I don't have any rituals that I need to do. I've been stressed a lot recently, and I'm gonna be honest, and last night say that like I probably walked back and forth through my doorway I think like 4 times, and then I was like, what are you doing? Like, come on, like you go to bed, you know, kind of thing. I would have done that every day, and there was a time where I walked back and forth through the doorway, and the only time I stopped is because I was hyperventilating, sobbing. That was the only reason I stopped, because I physically was crying so hard that I couldn't get up off the floor. And now I'm walking back 4 times, which I haven't done in months, and I'm like, okay, come on, you're being ridiculous, go to bed. Like, you're telling me that's what that means, that I'll still have OCD? I'll take it every time. Other ways that my OCD might show up now is sometimes I'll pick up a cup and it doesn't feel right? And I feel like then this is contaminated. I'm like, oh, I can't use this cup. And the second I think, oh, I can't use something, guess what I'm using for the whole day? Yeah, that. So I'll do that with a pen. If I pick up a pen and it doesn't feel right, I make a point not to put it down and put it back up, because it could be so easy to do. But once again, thousands of those over the years, they add up. So I don't put it down. I write, and I write important things. I write my trigger words. I write all of the things that I could. I use the pen for the whole day just to make a point, just to prove that it's not the pen, it's not the thought. I was okay because I'm okay, because I was going to be okay regardless. Even just saying that, I'm like, oh, I should probably knock on wood. Like, I'm not, guess who's not going to knock on wood? Me. To this day, I genuinely try to continue learning, and every few weeks, months, I try to do something bigger to really push myself outside of my comfort zone, to make me feel emotionally contaminated, because it takes a lot more now than it did back in the day. How lucky am I that I get to look back on 2 of those massive trips for me as a success and not as a failure. I could have gone really internal. I could have let my OCD thoughts take over because it's really easy to do, but I didn't. I fought them. I fought them every single step of the way. I also embraced it. I embraced the fear instead of trying to push it away. Not every day is going to be perfect, obviously, but it's how you handle it. It's just like those people who get hurt and hurt other people, or you can get hurt and not want other people to feel that way. It kind of goes with OCD. You can get hurt and then you can get sad, or you can get hurt and you can get angry and you can do something about it. I feel like growing up, a lot of the times I viewed myself as a victim and these things were happening to me, and then I did realize at some point, like, I did have a choice. How I've looked at it, especially recently, is your OCD is going to make you in pain regardless if you're in the thralls of it. So why not choose your pain? Exposure therapy wasn't a great time for me. I don't like being uncomfortable, and at points, like, it felt kind of excruciating. But at least I knew there was a point and a silver lining and an outcome. Actually, to be fair, at that point, I didn't even know. I just was trying. I just was testing, because I didn't know anybody who had come out the other side. I didn't even have any reassurance that that was possible. And I know reassurance isn't good, but I am telling you that it's possible. I am so grateful for exposure and response prevention therapy, because it's increased my tolerance for sadness, for anger, for stress, for fear, and especially for my intrusive thoughts. The hard times that I had with OCD never benefited me in any way. I went through the hard times with 0 reward. Actually, it was the opposite. It only caused me more pain. You can put yourself through the pain of OCD, or you can put yourself through the pain of exposure therapy. And honestly, The pain of exposure therapy only makes you braver and makes you feel more like stronger. It only took me a few weeks to really get behind exposure therapy because I was throwing myself into it. The only thing I'm grateful to OCD for is for the community it's given me, because I feel like we're a really great community. And the second is that it's given me exposure therapy because I've been able to incorporate it into every single aspect of my life. And it's only made my life so much better. I sound like such a spokesperson for exposure therapy, but I am, because I've used it to help my anxiety. I've used it to help my eating disorders. I would eat my fear foods. I've used it to help me get outside of my bubble, to make new friends, if I embarrass myself, so what? OCD loves being in control. So be in control of what's making you uncomfortable. Choose your exposures. A compulsion is instant gratification. You feel better immediately in the moment, but it will make it worse. It always does, because it reinforces that false belief that you were okay because you did the compulsion. Exposure therapy makes it worse in the moment, but it makes it better for the rest of your life. Genuinely, when you put it like that, which one would you choose? And at the end of the day, the choice is always yours, even though it's a hard one. I should know, because OCD literally almost killed me, but it didn't. And I'm here, and I've been able to live more life in the last 8 years than I did in the first 19. So if you or somebody that you know is struggling with OCD, go to NOCD.com. Every single one of their therapists are licensed and trained in not only OCD, but exposure and response prevention therapy as well. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you guys have a fantastic day.